Without a doubt, Kingdom Come Deliverance is one of the best looking games ever created. But cranking up the graphical settings to take in the splendor of this amazingly detailed and jaw-droppingly beautiful world of medieval Europe does come at a cost. As proud owners of 1080 Ti's, we fully expect to be able to install a game, crank the settings up to Ultra, and sit back and enjoy the wonders of high refresh rate gaming. Unfortunately, with the demanding nature of this game, some tweaks are necessary in order to enjoy a solid 60 FPS gameplay experience at 1440p. And with graphical behemoths like Far Cry 5 and Final Fantasy 15 on the way, it's probably something we're going to have to get used to. The primary culprit of frame rate drops in Kingdom Come Deliverance seems to come from the game's lighting elements. Through experimentation, I've found that altering the following 4 settings will have the biggest impact on your frame rate. These 4 settings can be found under Advanced Graphical Settings in the Settings menu, and they are Lighting, Shader Quality, Shadows, and Volumetric Effects Detail. Today we're going to take a look at the game's performance with Ultra settings, my own personal settings, and Nvidia's suggested optimized settings. For our first test, we'll be walking from the castle in Skalitz around Henry's house and back again. This gives us an idea of how the game performs outside during the daytime. Doing this with Ultra settings, we get a respectable average of 75 frames per second, with a 1% low of 60 frames per second. There's more activity in the marketplace of Skalitz than up by the castle. Running some laps around the marketplace, we see our Ultra frame rates drop below 60 FPS to a 1% low of 43, but maintaining an average of 66 FPS. Inside Henry's house, we have a fireplace and some window lighting, both of which will cause frame rate drops. Running around like a maniac in Henry's house gives us an average of 61.8 FPS, with a 1% low of 53. Finally, we test our Ultra settings in Talmberg at nighttime, walking from Henry's bed up to the ramparts while rendering torches wielded by Henry and several guards. This represents a worst-case scenario for your frame rate. Here we see our average frame rate drop to a choppy 40.7 FPS, with a low frame rate of 29. Now to test my personal settings. For these settings, I dropped lighting to very high, while setting shader quality, shadows, and volumetric effects detail to high. Running from the castle in Skalitz and around Henry's house again, we see our frame rates rise to an average of 94.9 FPS, with a low of 76. In the marketplace, our frame rate has gone up to 75.9 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 63 FPS. Running amok in Henry's house gets us an average of 86.6 FPS, with a low of 67. But finally, at night with torches, our frame rate is only 50.3 FPS, with a 1% low of 34. The last test I want to run is with the optimized settings for my system as suggested by Nvidia GeForce Experience. The settings for Nvidia Optimized are object quality, game effects, lighting, and particles to very high, physics, post-process quality, and shader quality to high, shadows and textures on medium, water detail, volumetric effects detail, and vegetation detail on high, with a measly 5% on object distance, LOD distance, and vegetation draw distance, and finally motion blur set to object. With these settings, we see a very satisfying average FPS of 114, with a minimum of 99 FPS around the castle. In the marketplace, we see our frame rates rise to an average of 98.3 FPS, with a low of 85. Running around Henry's house gives us an average of 104.4 FPS, with a low of 81. And in Talmberg at night, we see our average rise to 68.9 FPS, with our low only dropping to 44. With my altered settings, you'll maintain an average FPS over 60 frames per second for the majority of the game. It does still struggle some, in the worst case scenario, rendering multiple torches at night. But for me, I found it to be the best balance of performance and quality for a solid 60 plus FPS gameplay experience. What settings are you using to achieve a solid 60 FPS gameplay experience? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. My name's Yumi. Thanks for watching UMePC.